Our first story comes from Elias, a man who, for most of his life, found profound peace in the embrace of ancient forests. He was a seasoned solo hiker, a true woodsman who knew the rhythm of the trees and the whispers of the wind. His preferred sanctuary was Blackwood Forest, a sprawling expanse of ancient oaks and towering pines, notorious for its age and density. It was late October, the air crisp and sharp, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a smell Elias cherished. The forest floor was a tapestry of amber and russet, crunching satisfyingly under his boots as he ventured deeper, leaving the last vestiges of the hiking trail far behind. That day, however, was different. The usual symphony of the forest, the chirping of birds, the rustle of small creatures, the distant caw of a crow, was eerily absent. A silence, unnatural and heavy, pressed in on him. It wasn't the peaceful quiet he sought. It was a watchful, expectant stillness that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. Every fiber of his being screamed that something was amiss. He felt it in the prickle on his neck, the subtle shift in the air, the unmistakable sensation of being observed, even though he could see nothing but endless trees. He tried to shake off the unease, attributing it to an overactive imagination or perhaps the solitude amplifying his senses. But then it began. Faint, indistinguishable voices. They weren't from the wind. These were too distinct, too numerous. They sounded like human voices, but distorted, just beyond the grasp of comprehension, like a conversation happening in a language he almost knew, just out of reach. What truly unnerved him was that they seemed to move with him, always just behind him, always just to his sides. He would pause, straining his ears, and they would quiet, only to resume the moment he took another step. He spun around several times, scanning the dense undergrowth, but saw nothing but the unchanging pattern of trees and shadows. His heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The quiet was now a void, amplifying the phantom sounds. He swore he saw shadows shifting in his peripheral vision, movements that vanished the instant he tried to focus on them. It was as if the forest itself was playing a cruel trick on his mind, a psychological torment designed to unravel him. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, no longer faint murmurs but a cacophony of hushed, almost angry tones converging on him. They sounded frustrated, perhaps even malevolent. He started checking behind him constantly, his grip tightening on his hiking poles, every muscle tensed. Then, through a break in the canopy, between two ancient gnarled oaks whose branches seemed to weep with age, he saw it, a tall, dark figure. It stood unnaturally still, too rigid for a human, too statuesque for an animal. It was too far to make out any definitive details, but its presence alone radiated an oppressive chill. Its form seemed to absorb the light around it, making it appear as a void against the backdrop of the autumnal woods. It didn't move, didn't twitch. It simply stood, watching him. The absolute stillness of it was more terrifying than any sudden movement could have been. Elias felt an ancient, malevolent intelligence fixated solely on him. Panic, raw and visceral, seized him. All thought of rational explanation evaporated. His only instinct was to flee. He ran, scrambling through the undergrowth, ignoring the branches that lashed at his face and clothes. The whispers, now a furious chorus, seemed to chase him, echoing the frantic beat of his own feet. He didn't dare look back, but he could feel the figure's unblinking gaze burning into his back, a sensation that drove him harder, pushing his exhausted body to its limits. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs ached with fiery protest, until he burst out of the tree line and onto the gravel access road, collapsing in a gasping heap. He eventually dragged himself to his car, fumbling with the keys, his hands shaking so violently he could barely insert them into the ignition. He started the engine, threw the car into reverse, and sped away, not daring to glance in his rearview mirror until the forest was a distant, dark smudge against the horizon. Years later, Elias still avoids deep forests. The solitude he once cherished is now a source of dread. He still hears whispers in the wind, in the quiet of his own home, faint echoes of that terrifying encounter. He questions what he saw, what truly haunted him that day, but the terror was too real, too profound to dismiss as mere imagination. The woods, for Elias, are no longer a sanctuary, but a lurking nightmare. Our second story comes from Sarah, an artist who sought inspiration in the secluded beauty of nature. She chose Whisperwind Lake, a remote, mirror-smooth body of water nestled deep within an untouched wilderness, known for its pristine beauty and its sudden, thick fogs. It was mid-August, the air warm and humid, and Sarah had set up her campsite by the shore, eager to capture the lake's serene essence on canvas. She spent her days sketching, her nights listening to the gentle lapping of water against the shore, a perfect escape from the city's chaos. One afternoon, without warning, a dense pea soup fog rolled in, swallowing the landscape whole. It was so thick it reduced visibility to mere feet, an impenetrable shroud that disoriented her instantly. She had ventured a short distance from her campsite to collect some wildflowers for her sketches, and now the path she thought she knew intimately had vanished. Panic began to set in as the sun dipped lower and the light grew dim, turning the fog into an even more oppressive presence. Stumbling blindly through the swirling mist, desperately trying to retrace her steps, she unexpectedly stumbled upon something solid. It was an old, dilapidated cabin, one she had never seen on any map of the area. It looked ancient, forgotten, its timbers gray with age and coated in moss. Windows were boarded up, but on one side, through a gap in the rotting wood, she saw a faint, flickering light. A morbid curiosity, stronger than her fear, drew her closer. As she approached, the flickering light seemed to pulse with a slow, rhythmic beat. She heard faint sounds emanating from within, a discordant tinkling music, like an old music box playing a broken tune, but warped, out of sync. It was unsettling, almost mournful. Then she heard scratching sounds, soft at first, then growing more insistent, like long nails dragging across a rough surface. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she couldn't tear herself away. She felt a strange pull, a morbid fascination that defied all logic. Driven by an inexplicable urge, she pressed her eye to the narrow gap in the window boards. What she saw sent a shockwave of ice through her veins. An old, withered face, impossibly pale, with eyes that seemed ancient and empty, devoid of any light, stared back at her from the gloom inside. It was there for only a fraction of a second, a fleeting glimpse of something that defied human understanding, before it vanished as quickly as it appeared. The music box tunes seemed to swell slightly, then became silent, replaced by an unnerving quiet. Just as Sarah's mind struggled to process what she had seen, a low, drawn-out creak echoed through the dense fog. The cabin's front door, which had appeared firmly sealed and weathered, slowly began to swing open, revealing a deeper, more profound darkness within. From that void, a shadowy form, vaguely humanoid but indistinct, seemed to expand, its edges blurring into the surrounding mist. It was as if the darkness itself was taking on a physical shape, slowly emerging into the fading light. Sarah screamed, a raw, terrified sound that was quickly swallowed by the fog. She didn't hesitate, didn't think, she simply turned and ran, blindly plunging back into the swirling whiteout. She didn't care about direction, only about putting as much distance as possible between herself and that horrifying cabin. The fog, which had once felt merely disorienting, now seemed to press in on her, clutching at her, its icy tendrils making it impossible to see. Through the pounding in her ears, she thought she heard a faint, distorted laugh following her, a sound that twisted her stomach into knots. Eventually, by some miracle of instinct or sheer luck, she stumbled upon the main road far from where she intended to be. She managed to hitchhike to the nearest town, abandoning her campsite and all her belongings. Sarah never went camping again. She's haunted by the withered face in the window and the chilling thought of what might have fully emerged from the cabin's abyss. Sometimes, in the quiet of her apartment, she still hears the faint, broken melody of that music box tune, a cruel reminder of the nightmare she barely escaped. Our third terrifying tale comes from David, a solo mountaineer who lived for the challenge of conquering remote peaks. He was an experienced climber, an ascetic who thrived on the vast silence and unforgiving beauty of high altitude. His latest expedition took him to a particularly remote section of the Rockies, a range known for its stark, breathtaking, and often deadly landscapes. It was an early morning ascent, the air thin and biting, swirling with fresh snow, and David felt the familiar thrill of pushing his limits in splendid isolation. As he navigated a treacherous ice-covered ridge, the wind howling around him, he clearly heard it. His name, David, it called, carried on the wind, crisp and clear. He paused, surprised. He was miles from any other human, and the idea of an echo seemed improbable given the direction. He dismissed it as a trick of the wind, a momentary auditory hallucination brought on by fatigue and the biting cold. Yet a sliver of unease had been planted. He called out, "Hello." His voice, normally strong and resonant, was immediately answered by an echo. But it wasn't a normal echo. It was distorted, guttural, as if his own words were being mimicked by something with a broken, monstrous throat. It sounded less like a reflection of sound and more like a cruel mockery. This happened several times. Each time he spoke, the distorted echo would reply, each time a little closer, a little more menacing. He began to feel a profound sense of dread, the silence between the echoes suddenly pregnant with menace. Through the swirling snow and the jagged rock formations, he started seeing fleeting shapes. Dark, hunched figures that would appear at the very edge of his vision, only to vanish the instant he tried to focus on them. They were gone before he could properly register them, yet their presence was undeniable, leaving a chill in his heart. It felt like something was playing a psychological game with him, testing his sanity, pushing him to the brink of what he could comprehend. He knew he was truly alone, yet he felt utterly surrounded. The echo became more direct, the sounds less like repetitions and more like a conversation, or rather an attempt at communication. Muffled, indecipherable words would follow his own, growing louder, more coherent. Then, chillingly, he heard a clear phrase, "You're not alone." It was whispered, yet it sliced through the wind's roar, speaking directly into his mind. He froze, every muscle rigid with terror. What was out here? What was toying with him? He reached a particularly narrow ledge, a notorious traverse with a sheer, unforgiving drop hundreds of feet below. As he carefully navigated the icy path, placing one boot precisely in front of the other, he felt it, a distinct, cold push on his back. It wasn't strong enough to send him hurtling into the abyss, but it was undeniable, physical contact. He stumbled, his heart leaping into his throat, nearly losing his balance, but managed to catch himself just in time, his gloved hand scraping against the rock face. He spun around, adrenaline surging, but there was no one there, nothing but the swirling snow and the vast, empty expanse of the mountain. The realization that something unseen had tried to kill him froze him to the bone. David abandoned the climb immediately. All thoughts of glory or achievement vanished, replaced by an overwhelming urge to escape. He descended rapidly, not caring for caution, driven by an almost primal fear. He kept looking over his shoulder, convinced that whatever had pushed him was still there, lurking in the snow and shadow. The wind, which had once seemed to mock him, now seemed to whisper his name, an endless, insidious sound, until he was well below the tree line, where the ancient pines offered a small but welcome reprieve from the crushing isolation of the high peaks. He never returned to mountaineering. The vast, silent beauty of the mountains, once his solace, now held a sinister presence, a memory of an unseen entity that sought his demise. He distrusts his own senses, always wondering if the mountain truly spoke, if something ancient and malevolent dwelt within its icy heart, or if he had encountered something far more personal and terrifying. The cold dread of that push, the feeling of a presence intent on his death, still haunts his dreams, a recurring nightmare of an unseen hand pushing him toward the void. Our fourth chilling story concerns Mark, a lifelong fisherman who knew the local rivers intimately. He had spent countless hours on the Willow Creek River, a winding waterway known for its deep pools and abundant fish. For Mark, fishing was more than a hobby. It was a communion with nature, a quiet meditation. He knew every bend, every ripple, every secret of the river. One late summer evening, as dusk began to settle, casting long shadows across the water, he found himself at a particularly secluded bend, a spot he considered his personal sanctuary. The river, usually a lively chatter of rushing water and rustling leaves, was unnaturally still that evening. The surface of the deepest pool where he cast his line was like glass, reflecting the deepening twilight with eerie precision. An odd, sweet scent, not from any known plant or flower, began to permeate the air, intoxicating and slightly dizzying. A prickle of unease started to crawl up his spine, but he dismissed it as the strange calm before a summer night. Then, he saw it. Beneath the surface of the deepest pool, a pulsating, ethereal blue light. It wasn't a reflection of the sky or any natural phenomenon. It was clearly emanating from within the water itself. It moved slowly with a strange, deliberate intelligence, almost as if searching for something. Mark's rational mind struggled to find an explanation, his eyes widening in disbelief as the light continued its hypnotic dance beneath the water. As he watched, captivated, a beautiful, haunting melody began. It was a woman's voice, wordless, but full of an ancient sorrow and an irresistible allure. It seemed to come from the water itself, a siren song that resonated deep within his soul. Mark felt an overwhelming, undeniable compulsion to approach the water, to wade in, to surrender himself to the source of that enchanting sound. He felt his feet moving forward almost without conscious command, a puppet to the ethereal music. His fishing rod clattered, forgotten, to the ground as he stepped closer to the river's edge. He was at the very brink now, the cold water lapping at his boots. The blue light beneath the surface brightened, revealing a vague, graceful form moving within the depths, barely visible through the shimmering water. It was long, slender, and seemed to possess an unearthly beauty, shrouded in the shifting light. The singing intensified, filling his mind, drowning out all other thoughts, all sense of self-preservation. He felt an overwhelming, undeniable compulsion to embrace the cold embrace of the river, to join whatever entity beckoned from below. He leaned forward, his mind hazy with enchantment, ready to step into the darkness. Just as he was about to surrender, to take that final, fateful step into the unknown, a pale, unnaturally long and slender hand, with fingers that seemed vaguely webbed and tipped with dark nails, rose from the water. It reached slowly, deliberately towards his arm, its skin looking cold, translucent, and disturbingly human. The sight of that hand, so starkly alien and horrifying, shattered the enchantment. A gasp tore from his throat, and he stumbled backward, breaking free from the trance, shaking violently as if woken from a terrible nightmare. The singing abruptly stopped, the blue light vanished, and the river returned to its normal, gentle flow, as if nothing had happened. Mark threw away his fishing gear that night. He never returned to that bend in the river, nor any large body of water, especially at dusk. The melody of the siren song sometimes echoes in his mind, and he feels a cold, empty ache, as if a part of him still yearns for the river, for the mysterious entity that called to him. He knows, with a chilling certainty, that he encountered something ancient, something that feeds on souls, and that he narrowly escaped being dragged into an aquatic abyss, forever bound to the river's silent depths. Our final harrowing story comes from Frank, a grizzled veteran hunter, an expert tracker who prided himself on his self-sufficiency and his intimate knowledge of the wild. For decades, he had roamed the vast, untamed wilderness of northern Maine, a region known for its challenging terrain and its untouched beauty. Early one morning, with a heavy mist clinging to the ancient trees, Frank set out, rifle in hand, seeking game. He felt the familiar thrill of the hunt, the primal connection to the land. But that day, the wilderness had other plans. He soon discovered a set of tracks that were neither animal nor human. They were bipedal, yes, but impossibly large, far too wide, with an odd splayed toe pattern that defied anything he had ever seen in all his years of tracking. What truly unnerved him was their irregularity. They seemed to vanish and reappear, as if the creature could simply step out of existence and back in. A cold dread began to seep into his bones. Then came the smell, an overpowering, fetid odor, like rotting meat mixed with sulfur and something indescribably foul. It was an alien stench, primal and sickening, unlike anything he had ever encountered in the woods. It clung to the air, growing stronger as he cautiously followed the strange tracks. He felt a profound shift, the unsettling realization that he was no longer the hunter. He was unmistakably the hunted. Eyes, unseen, seemed to bore into his back, constant and predatory. The mist itself seemed to swirl with an unnatural intent, distorting shapes, playing tricks on his vision. He started hearing rustling sounds, too loud for a squirrel, too soft for a deer, always just out of sight, always moving parallel to him. He stopped, raising his rifle, scanning the dense foliage, but saw nothing. The silence would return, thick and heavy, only to be broken by a deep, guttural sound, unlike any animal he knew. It was a growl that echoed through the mist, a sound of raw aggression, territorial and menacing, promising violence to any who encroached upon its domain. Through a brief, tantalizing break in the mist, he saw it. A towering, hunched figure, covered in dark, matted fur or hair, moving with unnatural speed, almost blurring between the trees. Its head seemed disproportionately small for its massive body, and its limbs impossibly long, ending in what looked like powerful, clawed hands. It was gone in an instant, a fleeting nightmare that burned itself into his memory. He stood frozen, his heart pounding a frantic drum against his ribs, unable to reconcile what he had just witnessed with anything he knew of the natural world. Frank retreated to his camp, his mind reeling, every instinct screaming at him to get out. He frantically barricaded himself inside his tent, rifle loaded and ready, but he knew it was futile. He heard heavy, deliberate footsteps circling his tent, crushing leaves and twigs. A tearing sound ripped through the silence as something tried to rip open the side of his tent. A growl, ferocious and deep, rupting right outside, so close he could feel the vibrations. He knew it was its prey, and it was toying with him. In a desperate act of self-preservation, Frank fired a warning shot into the air, hoping to scare it off. The growl paused, then resumed with even greater fury. Realizing he was outmatched, he unzipped his tent and bolted, running blindly into the mist, leaving his camp and all his gear behind. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs gave out, until he collapsed from exhaustion, the terrifying growls still echoing in his mind, a promise of what awaited him if he dared to stop. He eventually stumbled upon a logging road, and by sheer luck was picked up by a passing truck. Frank never hunted again. He lives in a small, isolated cabin now, always armed, always looking over his shoulder. The wilderness, once his sanctuary, became his personal hell, a place of unimaginable terror. He knows with absolute certainty that what he encountered was real, a monstrous entity that defies description, and he lives with the chilling conviction that it's still out there, deep in the untouched forests of Maine, waiting for another unfortunate soul to wander too deep into its dark primordial domain.